Okay, so you've been doing the work, quote unquote, the work, maybe for years with therapy or meditation, journaling, cold plunges, saunas, books, events, maybe podcasts like this one. And you've probably had genuine breakthroughs along the way. Maybe there were certain moments of clarity where you thought, yep, this is it. This is the thing that's going to change everything. And then slowly the old patterns come back. The anxiety creeps back in, the overworking, the scrolling, the snapping at people you love, the same relationship dynamic playing out with just a different person, the same feeling of being stuck despite doing everything right. Now, what no one is telling you clearly enough is that there is a specific distinction and difference between coping and healing. And what most of the wellness industry sells you is coping. It's a fantastic business model. And it's incredibly useful, don't get me wrong. It's generally helpful coping, but it's coping nonetheless. And, I spent 8 years in psychotherapy. I did transcendental meditation. I read more self-help books than I can count, listened to every podcast. All of it deepened my understanding of my patterns and where they came from, why I was the way I was. And yet I kept repeating them. So frustrating. And the awareness in some ways actually made it worse because I couldn't see exactly what I was doing and I still couldn't stop. So that has nothing to do with you being disciplined or not. It's not a mindset problem. It's a biology problem. And today I really want to go deep and explain why. By the end of this episode, you are going to understand the actual difference between coping and healing at a biological level. You're going to understand what is really happening inside your nervous system when emotion gets suppressed and stored in the body. You're going to understand that why no amount of thinking, reading, or talking your way through something will get to the root cause. I'm going to share what healing actually looks like in practice, grounded in science, grounded in research, grounded in my own lived experience. This is one of the most important episodes I have recorded to date, so stay with me. And like I mentioned before, and if you've listened to the first few episodes of the show, you'll know that I experienced my own unique challenges and traumas with my family and suicidality and addiction. And that drove me into 8 years of psychotherapy, 5 of which I worked with Cameron who I actually interviewed on a previous episode. So I definitely encourage you to listen to that one as well. That was a phenomenal conversation. Psychotherapy was super helpful. Again, don't get me wrong, like genuine breakthroughs, real awareness of where these patterns of self-sabotage, avoidance, addiction, escapism came from. And I'm kind of classifying myself as a bit of a personal development junkie. And so I added TM, or transcendental meditation, to that laundry list of things to do. Read a bunch of self-help books, Tony Robbins, Bob Proctor, Mel Robbins, Byron Katie, Brian Tracy, you name it. Podcasts, attended various events, all of it genuinely helpful. Again, all of it deepening my understanding of why I am the way I am, why I think the way I do, why I play out certain patterns in my life, in my career, in my relationships, in my health. And yet I kept repeating the same patterns. I was still using substances. I was still addicted to porn. I was still scrolling mindlessly. I was overworking, overfunctioning, constantly living in a state of anxiety and pressure and survival mode and chasing milestones in my career or in my business from a very fear-driven place. No bueno, not fun at all. And in actual fact, the awareness of these patterns actually made it worse because I could see exactly what I was doing and then still couldn't stop. It was so frustrating. Maybe you can relate, knowing why you're doing the thing that you're doing in your relationships, in your career, in your life, and then still not being able to change. And so the realization that none of it was touching what actually needed to be touched was groundbreaking for me. Because I realized that it wasn't touching the unfelt, unprocessed emotion living in my body. And then being the seeker that I am, that sent me on a wild goose chase that led me deeper into the body and the unconscious mind and the somatic work or body-based practices. I started working with a somatic experiencing practitioner, which was amazingly cathartic for me. I actually learned how to properly start feeling my emotions, processing, crying, expressing, breath work as well, which was, and still is an absolute game changer for me to be able to connect to my nervous system and to my emotions. Shadow work, EFT or emotional freedom tapping, IFS, internal family systems, jargon, which I'll go into and what they actually mean. But what I say all of that to say is that I actually finally began feeling what I'd been running away from, and the vices, the unproductive patterns of thinking and behavior naturally fell away. Like I don't use substances anymore. It's not through discipline or willpower, but because the emotion that I had suppressed that was driving me to escape and to numb out had finally been felt. And so, I see a lot of people, again, no judgment, because this was my journey as well, trying to, do sober January or whatever and trying to give up things for a period of time or go cold turkey. And then, of course, the pattern comes back because it hasn't been addressed at the root cause, right? And so it's really powerful. And my friend and brother and shadow coach, who I've known for a few years now, Parag, and actually spoke to on this podcast in the last episode, has a really beautiful framework for this. And he talks about, the trauma or the unprocessed emotion is a root cause. If it doesn't get fully felt, then it starts being manifested through perhaps physiological tension. Maybe you get a headache, or you're storing tightness in your jaw, or your hips are really tight, or shallow breathing. Then again, if that isn't dealt with, it starts manifesting psychologically through overthinking, rumination, anxiety, depression. And then finally, the last sort of door that it knocks on is behaviorally. So through shutting down in relationships, snapping at people you love, numbing out, escaping, people pleasing, right? All of these are manifestations of that root cause, which is the unfelt, unprocessed emotion. And so that's exactly what this episode is about, because there is such an important difference between coping and healing. Like I said, most of what the wellness industry sells you is coping. So therapy is finally getting its time in the limelight, which I'm super grateful for, because it's a really important tool. Again, I think it's a sort of like a staged process that you go through, a bit like me. Maybe we need that awareness first before we can start going deeper. I feel, at least, has been my experience. Meditation, journaling, cold exposure, books, podcasts, events, they're really just tapping into your cognitive faculties, your thinking mind, right? And it's not actually getting to what is living in your body. So these aren't bad tools. They are powerful tools. They can help with expanding your intellectual understanding of why you are the way you are, where your patterns came from. But again, there is a core distinction between regulation and resolution. Coping just manages the symptom, whereas healing addresses the root. And like I said, somatic experiencing, definitely worth looking into. Peter Levine is the founder of it, and he makes this distinction clearly. He said symptom relief is not the same as trauma resolution. Now, for the body to genuinely heal, it must complete its own biological response to the original threat. So I experienced all kinds of challenging events growing up, and was exposed to tension and conflict and hostility, and my body shut down. Right? My body shut down, and I was in fight or flight for years, decades even, I would say. So my body still felt like it was in danger. So I could talk about these things and I could understand it, but my body was still in danger. And that's a nice little segue into Bessel van der Kolk, psychiatrist, author of The Body Keeps the Score, which you may have heard of, reinforces the same thing. Trauma is not stored in the brain or in your narrative memory, but in the body itself, which is precisely why talking about what you've been through, while it is helpful, will always have its limits. The way I like to see it is like it'll take you so far until you're ready to go deeper, right? So it is an important part of the journey. It's not the whole journey though. And so my question to you is, are you feeling better? or are you actually getting better? Now, what's actually happening in the body is that emotion is literally energy in motion. The word itself tells you what it needs to do. It does what it says on the tin, right? Now, when emotion is not allowed to move through the body, it gets stored. It gets stored in your jaw, gets stored in your chest, in your back, in your hips, in your thighs, in your neck, in your shoulders, right? You might be able to just take a moment now and just check in with yourself. Where am I holding tension in my body? Right? And what happens then is the nervous system treats that stored emotion as an ongoing threat that needs to be managed and contained. So all of the nervous system's resources are going towards keeping this emotion in the body. It takes way more energy for the nervous system to hold on to an emotion than to let it go. Which is why when we're walking around with suppressed emotion, we're living in survival mode. We're not really operating from our fullest capacity for expression and energy. And there's really interesting research around the polyvagal theory. Stephen Porges, he's a neuroscientist, and he shows us that the autonomic nervous system operates across 3 distinct states. You've probably heard them. I just shared them before. Safe and social, fight or flight, and shut down or freeze. Now, when emotion is chronically suppressed, the system gets locked in survival mode and cannot access the higher states required for genuine growth, connection with others, for creativity. Gabor Mate, again, the GOAT in trauma research, in my opinion, and author of When the Body Says No, spent decades documenting how processed emotional stress is directly linked to physiological disease. Even the World Health Organization has come out and said something like over 95% of disease is caused by stress. So the body will always find a way to express what the mind is refusing to feel, always. And like I said before, it's going to knock on the certain doors to get your attention. Like, disease doesn't just happen randomly. There is, more often than not, unprocessed emotion, unfelt emotion. It's waiting for you. It's trying to get your attention in a variety of different ways. And again, Levine, founder of somatic experiencing, described what happens when stress responses are repeatedly interrupted or suppressed. He calls it a frozen residue of energy stored in the body, and it continues to dysregulate the nervous system until it's finally released. And this has been my journey as well. I mean, I have struggled for so many years. I'd say like about 10 years. Only recently am I coming out of this, thank God, with like a frozen hips, like just seriously tight hips. So much so that it's made it difficult for me to walk comfortably, let alone to train in the gym. And my hips are so tight. It feels like I have like a corset, like cinched around my waist. So uncomfortable. I went to see physios to take a look at it, did all kinds of rehab, stretching, yoga, the works, right? You name it. And yet I continued to feel this tightness in my hips. It wasn't until I got deeper into body-based work, somatic healing, to start releasing that emotion. There was anger, there was fear, there was shame, there was guilt. Like, these are emotions that get trapped there. They got trapped in the muscular tissue, in the fascia around my hips, right? So that's why someone can be doing everything right on the surface and still continue to feel flat, anxious, disconnected, stuck. All of the nervous system resources are being consumed by this work of containment. We need to contain this emotion. And talking about it, and this is my journey as well with mental health and my last business as well, I'm a huge proponent of talking about it. Let's have a chat, all right? Let's talk about what's going on. There is, I believe, some catharsis that happens when you can actually share what you're going through with someone else who holds a safe, non-judgmental, compassionate container. 100%, right? And the insight is real. The awareness is real, as it was for me in my journey. And, I thank Cam again for his beautiful work holding space for me. And it's a yes and. Yes, that's valuable. And I needed to address the healing. Because the reason is biological. It's not personal or intellectual. The part of the brain that stores trauma is not the part that processes language. Bessel is super clear on this. The trauma response bypasses the rational brain entirely. The amygdala, your threat detection system, fires before your prefrontal cortex can even step in. That's why you can understand something perfectly and be very intellectual and rationalize it and still be unable to change it. And I also want to talk about Bruce Perry. He's a child psychiatrist and wrote the book The Boy Who Was Raised as a Dog. He describes how the brain processes experience from the bottom up. It's the brainstem first, limbic system second, cortex last. So healing has to follow that same sequence. You can't start at the top and work down. So I say all of this to say you can't think your way out of a felt body experience. It's simply not possible. And it was never your fault that it wasn't working. So I also want to use this opportunity. If you are feeling frustrated, exasperated, irritated, maybe if you're like me, beating yourself up, like, man, I'm doing everything right. I'm reaching out to get support. I'm really trying to get on top of this, but it doesn't seem to be working. It was never your fault that it wasn't working, right? It's just a matter of expanding your awareness of what tools are out there and understanding the difference between coping and healing. And this episode is designed to help you with that. Because what healing actually looks like is the permanent resolution of a behavioral pattern by addressing its emotional root cause. I'll say that again. Healing is the permanent resolution of a behavioral pattern by addressing its emotional root cause. You know when you have healed at the root cause, when a behavioral pattern slips away, falls away, disintegrates, right? When you can actually be present and vulnerable and intimate with your partner without shutting down emotionally. When you can be present with curiosity and intrigue as opposed to getting triggered and getting defensive or shrinking down when you're met with conflict. When you can go out with friends and not numb out because you don't feel like you need to anymore. You are just like at peace. Your body feels safe enough to just exist without relying on external substances. And right, again, if you know my story, you know that's been a huge part of my journey and my own struggles with addiction. And healing has not been linear for me. There've been so many different times where I was making some progress and then I would revert back. And then I would commit to the process and then go through it. And it's painful. Healing is not comfortable. It does not look like Instagram highlight reels, right? It is deeply uncomfortable. In my journey and in people that I work with, it's often accompanied by lots of crying, lots of emotional processing, shaking, screaming. Your body, think about it. Your body is finally realizing that it's no longer in danger. It's freeing up all of these resources, this energy that had previously been used to hold onto emotion and shut down and lock down. Your body can finally breathe again. And that can be a lot. That can be a huge shock to the system after years, decades of operating in a completely different way. It's taken a toll on my sleep, on my social life, and just wanting to be a bit more of a hermit while I go through this, painful phase of healing. It's really uncomfortable. It's really, really uncomfortable. I'm not here to sugarcoat it at all. I don't want to sugarcoat it. You know me. If you know me, I tell it like it is, and it may not be for you right now. It does require nervous system readiness. Your body will tell you if you're ready to step into healing because you can't force it before the body feels safe enough to go there, right? And somatic experiencing was one of the approaches or modalities that I worked with. Again, Peter Levine developed it. The way that works is by helping the body complete that incomplete stress response, right? That stress response that got frozen in time. So it doesn't require you to relive the story. It just works directly with the sensation in your body. And I've benefited from that. It's helped me strengthen my mind-body connection. EFT tapping, such a game changer. That's been a huge part of my journey personally, and I share that with clients as well. Kind of looks maybe weird and funky and strange. If you're not on YouTube right now, you'll see, I'm tapping on my face with my fingers. And so it looks a bit strange, but there is a lot of research to support how efficacious it is. The way tapping works is it combines acupressure with cognitive processing to reduce activation in your amygdala, in your threat detection center. And there's a 2012 study published in the Journal of Nervous and Mental disease by Church found that a single session of EFT tapping reduced cortisol levels by 24% compared to control groups, alongside significant reductions in PTSD and anxiety symptoms rather. That I've done extensively and studied in is developed by Richard Schwartz and outlined in his book No Bad Parts, reframes every compulsive or destructive behavior that you play out as a protective part of the self that's trying to keep you safe. So when you're people pleasing, you're chasing validation, you're shutting down emotionally, you're getting triggered and defensive or shrinking down or numbing out, none of that is bad. None of that is bad. That's actually a part of yourself, a protector part, simply trying to keep you safe. And so healing doesn't mean we get rid of these parts at all. It simply means that we befriend them. We get to know them. We get to understand why they do what they do and just help them release the burden that they have been carrying. Often, when you do that in a context where you can connect to your body as well, it is associated with an emotional release. And it's beautiful because that's healing at the root cause. Shadow work as well, I have done extensively, and I guide clients through this as well. This is rooted in Carl Jung's depth psychology. What that does is it involves the integration of the rejected or the hidden aspects of ourself. So all of the parts that we suppressed because they felt unsafe or unacceptable. You know, the part that feels scared or sensitive, the part that wants to play and have fun, but we've suppressed these parts of ourselves for some reason or another to try and fit in, to be okay in the environment that we're in. Now, when these parts are reclaimed, the parts that we judge, their energy stops leaking out sideways through compulsion and self-sabotage. This, incidentally, is a huge reason why I can talk about what I've been through with peace and acceptance and gratitude, right? Because I've owned all of the parts of myself. Well, not all. I'm continuing to work on it, and I'll continue to work on it my whole life. But the parts of myself that I used to judge, like the part that likes to go out and party and get drunk and, get high and all of these things and numb out and distract myself and escape, like I would judge that part with shame, right? And I would hold on to such deep shame and guilt in my body because I felt like I was betraying myself and betraying my needs. Now, when I reclaimed that part, then I integrated it and I see it as just a part of myself that was, just doing its best, right? Doing its best. Then I stopped compulsively using and self-sabotaging. So shadow work's super, super powerful. And breath work, I do it daily. It's such a game changer as well. It works directly on the autonomic nervous system through the vagus nerve, which you may have heard of. Conscious breathing stimulates a parasympathetic response, which creates this window of safety and actually starts to allow emotional energy to begin moving through the body. The way I like to look at it is it's like if you have a bunch of concrete that you're trying to push through a small tunnel. Something like breath work kind of aerates the concrete, turns it into wet cement, and expands the diameter of the tunnel so that it can start moving through more effectively. So you can start moving that emotional energy through the body. That's what this work is about. And it is the physiological foundation of our capacity for emotional regulation and genuine social connection, right? I'm so much more present with the people around me because of this. So I did want to take you deep into some of these modalities. I hope it wasn't too jargon heavy, but just to give you a bit of an insight into what they are, how they work, how they're different to the, conventional coping management style approaches. The main takeaway though that I want you to get from this, or the common thread across every one of these modalities, they work with the body, not around it. And so I want to give you the opportunity to check in with yourself now with a bit of an assessment, an honest self-assessment, so that you know if you're coping or healing. And the first question I have for you is, are you managing how you feel? Or are your patterns actually changing? Are you managing how you feel? Or are your patterns actually changing? Do you feel better after your practice? Or do you feel better because of it? Meaning, if you remove it, does the anxiety, the overworking, the numbing out return? Or does it actually fall away? What about your relationships? Are your relationships, your behaviors, and your nervous system genuinely different than they were 2 years ago? Or are they the same? And are you just better at containing managing the same thing, right? No judgment here. I want you to be really honest with yourself and reflect, because the coping signs are that the pattern returns the moment that the routine is removed. So the trigger still has charge. There's still an emotional charge living in your body. And so the behavior is being white knuckled. You're still pushing through it. It hasn't been resolved. Now, the sign that you're healing is that the pattern loses its grip without effort. The trigger loses its emotional charge. The behavior, the numbing out, the overworking, the anxiety, the people pleasing, the validation seeking, all of that stuff. The behavior naturally falls away because the wound, the suppressed emotion that it was protecting, is no longer there. And I want to invite you to be radically compassionate with yourself, because this can be a confronting process to go through, as it was for me. And I slipped into judging myself and judging where I'm at on my journey and feeling like I should be further ahead. And man, why do I keep on repeating this even though I'm doing so much? Please have compassion with yourself. Coping is not failure. Coping is what has kept you functional long enough to get here, to this moment. You made it, right? And honor it for that. And then ask honestly whether it is still enough. Is this enough? Like, can I continue to live like this? Do I still want to live like this? Or do I want to heal for good? So my invitation for you is not to abandon your tools. Your tools are helpful and they serve a purpose. Cold plunges, meditation, therapy, exercise, right? Keep doing them. They matter. They are super important. They're super helpful for regulation, right? But consider whether they are the whole picture or just the part of the picture that you can see. Because if you have done years of work and you're still feeling stuck and you're still repeating the same patterns and behaviors, the root cause, the emotion, may still be unfelt. Now, this emotion, whatever it is, shame, fear, guilt, anger, resentment, grief, it's not the enemy. It is the doorway, right? The obstacle is the way. That is the portal through which you can start healing these patterns for good. Like I said, emotion is energy in motion. So when you actually let it move, it releases. When it releases, the pattern dissolves on its own. This takes so much courage. It takes courage for you to even lean into this episode and listen. If you've made it this far, I can tell you've got a boatload of courage, a boatload of self-awareness, right? It takes courage. It takes nervous system readiness to do this work. It takes the right support. But the good news is it is available to you. And it's the most important work you'll ever do. So let's bring it in for a landing. If this landed for you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. If you know someone who is feeling stuck on their mental and emotional well-being healing journey, this may be the very thing that they need to listen to today. If you found it useful, I'd really appreciate a rating or a review. It helps this show reach the people that it's meant for, gets the word out. My mission is to serve and to provide as much value as I can from my own experience, from research, from science. So yeah, let's get this out there. I really appreciate you doing that. Yeah, I'll include some links in the show notes for the modality and the research references mentioned today. So do your due diligence, right? Ask questions. Don't just take everything at face value. Don't just take what I say at face value. Do your own research. Be well informed. This is your healing journey. Treat it with the consciousness and the diligence and the reverence that it needs to be treated with. I'm just touched that you're here and you made it this far. Lots of love to you. And I'll see you in the next episode.